The rain poured down like the heavens were mourning that night, thick, cold drops slapping against the windshield of a sleek black Mercedes crawling through the empty road. Inside, Ethan Cole, a man known to the world as the youngest self-made CEO in the city, sat in silence, his fingers drumming absently on the steering wheel. He had everything: power, wealth, success, but none of it filled the hollow silence echoing inside him. The only sound he heard louder than the rain was the echo of his own loneliness. And then, through the storm, came a faint silhouette, a girl, drenched and trembling, clutching something small to her chest. She raised a hand, knocked weakly on his window, and with a voice that quivered as much as the rain, whispered, "Please, my child is sick." That single sentence shattered the walls around his heart. Ethan froze. For a man used to boardrooms, numbers, and negotiations, compassion wasn't part of his daily vocabulary. Yet something about her voice, desperation laced with a mother's fear, cut through the storm and pierced him deeper than he could explain. He rolled the window down just enough to speak. "Get in," he said softly. The girl hesitated, eyes flickering between fear and hope, before she opened the door and slid in, her soaked hair sticking to her face. In her arms, a small boy lay limp, his lips pale and skin burning with fever. Ethan turned the heater on full blast. "What happened?" he asked, pulling back onto the road. He's been sick for days," she said, voice breaking. "The clinic turned us away because I couldn't pay. I was trying to get to the city hospital, but the bus broke down. I've been walking for hours." Ethan glanced at her through the dim light, tired eyes, clothes clinging to her frame, a face too young to carry so much sorrow. The guilt hit him unexpectedly. How many like her had suffered silently in a city he ruled with cold efficiency? He'd built empires but ignored the streets below. "I'll take you there," he said simply. She looked at him, as if not believing kindness still existed. "Thank you," she whispered, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. The drive felt endless. The boy coughed weakly, and she held him tighter, whispering prayers. Ethan's hands gripped the wheel tighter than ever before. For the first time, the billionaire who could buy anything felt helpless. He pushed the car faster through the storm. When they reached the hospital, he jumped out, scooped the boy into his arms, and ran inside. "We need help," he shouted, his usual calm command replaced with raw urgency. Nurses rushed forward, taking the child as the mother stumbled after them. Hours passed. Ethan sat in the waiting room, soaked and silent, staring at the sterile walls. The girl, whose name he learned was Maya, sat across from him, her hands clasped together, lips moving in prayer. When the doctor finally emerged, both of them stood up. "He's stable now," the doctor said kindly. "Severe pneumonia, but he'll recover with rest and medicine." Maya broke down in tears. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief washing through him like sunlight after a storm, but when she turned to thank him, she looked away quickly, embarrassed. "I don't have money to pay." "I'll work, I'll do anything, but please don't." Ethan stopped her with a gentle shake of his head. "You don't owe me anything." Yet even as he said it, He realized he owed her something, a truth he hadn't faced in years. Because in helping her, he'd found something he'd long forgotten, the feeling of being human. Days later, he returned to the hospital to check on them. Maya was sitting beside her son's bed, reading softly from a tattered book. Her clothes were still worn, but her eyes, those eyes had life again. When she saw him, she stood quickly. "You came back." "I wanted to make sure he's okay," Ethan replied. The boy smiled shyly, clutching a small toy car Ethan had brought. They talked for a while. She told him about her life, how she worked 2 jobs since her husband died, how she barely survived. Every word chipped away another layer of Ethan's carefully built armor. He began visiting often, sometimes bringing food, sometimes just sitting in silence. Maya's presence became a quiet balm to his restless soul. She never treated him like a billionaire, never asked for anything, and that made her kindness even more powerful. When the boy, Noah, was discharged, Ethan offered to drive them home. Their home was a tiny room in a crumbling building, damp walls and flickering lights. He stood there, taking it all in, guilt settling in his chest. "You shouldn't have to live like this," he said quietly. "We don't have much," Maya said, smiling faintly, "but we have each other. That's enough." Her words followed him long after he left. That night, sitting in his empty penthouse, he couldn't stop hearing her voice. "That's enough." He looked around, at the glass, the gold, the silence, and realized it wasn't. Weeks passed, and fate brought them together again. Ethan started a foundation in memory of his late parents, a program to help struggling families with health care and education. Maya was the first person he called to help lead it. She hesitated. "Why me?" "Because you know what it means to fight alone," he said, and so began something neither of them expected, a partnership built not on power, but compassion. Working together, they rebuilt lives. Ethan changed policies, opened doors he never saw before. Maya inspired him every day, her strength quiet yet unstoppable. But even as their friendship deepened, both were afraid of crossing the line between gratitude and something far more dangerous, love. Ethan had buried his heart years ago, and Maya was too used to losing people to trust easily. Yet, love doesn't need permission. It grows silently, like sunlight through rain. One evening, after a long day at the foundation, they stood watching the sunset over the city. The sky was the same shade as that first stormy night. Maya looked up at him and said softly, "If you hadn't stopped that night," he smiled, eyes gentle. "Maybe I needed saving more than you did." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full of everything they didn't need to say. Years later, the story of the lonely CEO who stopped in the rain became something people whispered about, not for its wealth, but for its heart. Ethan and Maya's foundation grew, changing thousands of lives. And in the quiet moments, when the rain would fall again, Ethan would hold her hand and remember that everything he'd been searching for began with a single knock on his window, and a voice that said, "Please, my child is sick." That night didn't just save a child, that it saved him too.